once again back to Exploring Arda, a Tolkien-centered podcast where I'm your host Jackson, and I go through a bunch of Tolkien's works other than Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And yeah, I'm already hiccuping and coughing, so naturally part of Exploring Arda. So it's been a long time. I've had a lot of projects here and there at the end of the year, but now that it is 2025, which is kind of crazy, actually 25 years into the 2000s, that's kind of difficult to really grasp at the same time, but also exciting, I guess. But I don't know, new year, so I'm very optimistic, very motivated for this coming year. Part of which because we get to continue reading Children of Húrin. So still got the glare, but hey, Children of Húrin. So from the very last time, which was months ago, and I'm trying to remember. So all of Nargathrond was when Glaurung came and invaded Nargathrond, where Túrin was at. Pretty much chased everybody out. Orcs came and captured a bunch of the people of Nargathrond, and Túrin had to pretty much decide on, is he going to keep with the people of Nargathrond, who he was there with for a few years, or does he turn back to Dor-lómin and go and save his mother and sister? And so he decides to go after his family, because I guess that's what matters to him most, I guess. He's a very conflicting character, so. But yeah, I think with that short little introduction out of the way, I think we should just get right into the story, because I'm excited. So, here we go. Chapter 12, The Return of Túrin to Dor-lómin. At last worn by haste and the long road, for 40 leagues and more he had journeyed without rest, he came with the first ice of winter to the pools of Ivrin, where before he had been healed, but they were now only a frozen mire, and he could drink there no more. Thence he came to the passes into Dor-lómin, and snow came bitterly from the north, and the ways were perilous and cold. Though 23 years were gone since he had trodden that path, it was graven in his heart. So great was the sorrow of each step at the parting from Morwen. Thus at last he came back to the land of his childhood. It was bleak and bare, and the people there were few and churlish, and they spoke the harsh tongue of the Easterlings, and the old tongue was become the language of serfs or of foes. Therefore Túrin walked warily, hooded and silent, and he came at last to the house that he sought. It stood empty and dark, and no living thing dwelt near it, for Morwen was gone, and Brodda the incomer, he that took by force Erin, Húrin's kinswoman, to wife, had plundered her house, and taken all that was left to her of goods or of servants. Brodda's house stood nearest to the old house of Húrin, and thither Túrin came, spent with wandering and grief, begging for shelter, and it was granted to him, for some of the kindlier manners of old were still kept there by Erin. He was given a seat by the fire by the servants, and a few vagabonds as grim and wayward as he, and he asked news of the land. At that the company fell silent, and some drew away, looking askance at the stranger. But one old vagabond's man, with a crutch, said, "If you must speak the old tongue, master, speak it softer, and ask for no tidings. Would you be beaten for a rogue, or hung for a spy? For both you may well be by the looks of you." "Which is but to say," he said, coming near and speaking low to Túrin's ear, "one of the kindly folk of old that came with Sador in the days of gold, before heads wore wolf hair. Some here are of like sort, though now made beggars and slaves, and but for the lady Erin would get neither this fire nor this broth. Whence are you, and what news would you have?" "There was a lady called Morwen," answered Túrin, "and long ago I lived in her house. Thither after far wandering I came to seek welcome, but neither fire nor folk are there now." Nor have been this long year and more," answered the old man. "But scant were both fire and folk in that house since the deadly war, for she was of the old people, as doubtless you know, the widow of our lord, Húrin, Galdor's son. They dared not touch her, though, for they feared her, proud and fair as a queen before sorrow marred her. Witch-wife they called her, and shunned her. Witch-wife, it is but elf-friend in the new language. Yet they robbed her. Often she and her daughter would have gone hungry, but for the lady Erin. She aided them in secret, it is said, and was often beaten for it by the churl Brodda, her husband by need." "And this long year and more," said Túrin, Are they dead or made thralls, or have the orcs assailed her? It is not known for sure, said the old man, but she has gone with her daughter, and this Brodda has plundered her and stripped what remained. Not a dog is left, and her few folk made his slaves. Save some that have gone begging, as I have. I have served her for many years, in the great matter before, Sador or One-Foot, a cursed axe in the woods long ago, or I would be lying in the great mound now. Well, I remember the day when Húrin's boy was sent away, and how he wept, and she when he was gone. To the hidden kingdom he went, it was said. With that the old man stayed his tongue and eyed Túrin doubtfully. I am old, and I babble, master, he said. Mind me not. But though it be pleasant to speak the old tongue with one that speaks it fair as in time past, the days are ill, and one must be wary. Not all that speak the fair tongue are fair of heart. Truly, said Túrin, my heart is grim. But if you fear that I am a spy of the north or the east, then you have learned little more wisdom than you have had long ago, Sador Labadel. The old man eyed him agape. Then trembling he spoke. Come outside. It is colder, but safer. You speak too loud and I too much for an Easterling's hall. When they were come to the court, he clutched at Túrin's cloak. Long ago you dwelt in that house, you say, Lord Túrin, but why have you come back? My eyes are opened and my ears at last. You have the voice of your father, but young Túrin alone ever gave me that name, Labadel. He meant no ill. We were merry friends in those days. What does he seek here now? Few are we left, and we are old and weaponless. Happier are those in the great mound. I do not come with thought of battle, said Túrin, though your words have waked the thought in me now, Labadel. But it must wait. I am seeking the Lady Morwen and Nienor. What can you tell me, and swiftly? Little, lord, said Sador. They went away secretly. It was whispered among us that they were summoned by the Lord Túrin, for we did not doubt that he had grown great in the years, a king or a lord in some south country, but it seems this is not so. It is not, answered Túrin. A lord I was in a south country, though now I am a vagabond, but I did not summon them. Then I know not what to tell you, said Sador, but the Lady Erin will know, I doubt not. She knew all the counsel of your mother. How can I come to her? That I know not. It would cost her much pain were she caught whispering at a door with the wandering wretch of the downtrod people. Even could any message call her forth. And such a beggarman as you are will not walk far up the hall towards the high board before the Easterlings seize him, and beat him, or worse. Then in anger Túrin cried, May I now walk up Brodda's hall, and will they beat me? Come and see. Actually, I'm going to do a little bit of a break here, because I usually do those, and kind of getting into the story itself. And I guess I'm halfway through the chapter, which I'll be doing 12 and 13, chapters 12 and 13. So Túrin's return to Dor-lómin is very grim, to say the least. Basically, all of his people are pretty much brought low. They're all under the servitude of the Easterlings, who have pretty much taken control of Dor-lómin at the time. So they're pretty much the ones in control. They don't know where Morwen and Nienor went. They think that Túrin called him, but Túrin's like, nope, absolutely not. That's why he's there. That's why he came back, to go find them. So, but it's great to know that Labadel is still kicking. He's still alive, and nice little rejoining, little union between friends of old, pretty much. Excuse me. So yeah, it's pretty much that as a quick summary. It's like a lot of things have gone south for his people, and Labadel's just very glad to see his old friend, in that he's like, hey, don't go up to the hall, but Túrin's like, okay, yeah, don't go to the hall. So it's kind of like a reverse psychology. Not so much so, but like, it almost feels that way, especially for Túrin. So it's like, you know what? Watch me. So, so now we get back into it again, and I'll probably read up until the end of the chapter here, so. Thereupon he went into the hall, and cast back his hood, and thrusting aside all in his path, he strode towards the board where sat the master of the house and his wife, and other Easterling lords. Then some rose to seize him, but he flung them to the ground and cried, Does no one rule this house, or is it an orc-hold rather? Where is the master? Then Brodda rose in wrath. I rule this house, said he. But before he could say more, Túrin said, Then you have not learned the courtesy that was in this land before you. Is it now the manner of men to let lackeys mishandle the kinsmen of their wives? Such am I, and I have an errand to the Lady Erin. Shall I come freely, or shall I come as I will?" "Come," said Brodda, scowling, but Erin turned pale. Then Túrin strode to the high board and stood before it and bowed. "Your pardon, Lady Erin," he said, "that I break in upon you thus, but my errand is urgent, and has brought me far. I seek Morwen, Lady of Dor-lómin, and Nienor, her daughter, but her house is empty and plundered. What can you tell me?" "Nothing," said Erin in great fear, for Brodda watched her narrowly. "That I do not believe," said Túrin. Then Brodda sprang forth, and he was red with drunken rage. "No more," he cried, "shall my wife be gainsaid before me by a beggar that speaks the serf tongue. There is no Lady of Dor-lómin, but as for Morwen, she was of the thrall folk, and has fled as thralls will. Do you likewise, and swiftly, and I will have you hung on a tree." Then Túrin leapt at him, and drew his black sword, and seized Brodda by the hair, and laid back his head. "Let no one stir," said he, "or this head will leave its shoulders. Lady Erin, I would beg your pardon once more, if I thought that this churl has ever done you anything but wrong. But speak now, and do not deny me. Am I not Túrin, Lord of Dor-lómin? Shall I command you?" "Command me," she said. "Who plundered the house of Morwen?" "Brodda," she answered. "When did she flee, and whither?" "A year and 3 months gone," said Erin. "Master Brodda and others of the incomers of the East hereabout oppressed her sorely. Long ago she was bidden to the hidden kingdom, and she went forth at last, for the lands between were then free of evil for a while, because of the prowess of the black sword of the south country, it is said. But now that is ended. She looked to find her son there awaiting her, but if you are he, then I fear that all has gone awry." Then Túrin laughed bitterly. "Awry?" he cried. "Yes, ever awry, as crooked as Morgoth." And suddenly a black wrath shook him, for his eyes were opened, and the spell of Glaurung loosed its last threads, and he knew the lies with which he had been cheated. "Have I been cozened, that I might come and die here dishonored, who might at least have ended valiantly before the doors of Nargathrond?" And out of the night about the hall it seemed to him that he heard the cries of Finduilas. "Not first will I die here," he cried. And he seized Brodda, and with the strength of his great anguish and wrath he lifted him on high and shook him as if he were a dog. "Morwen of the thrall folk, did you say? You son of dastards, thief, slave of slaves?" Thereupon he flung Brodda head foremost across his own table, full into the face of an Easterling that rose to assail Túrin. In that fall Brodda's neck was broken, and Túrin leapt after his cast and slew 3 more that cowered there, for they were caught weaponless. There was tumult in the hall. The Easterlings that sat there would have come against Túrin, but many others were gathered there who were of the elder people of Dor-lómin. Long had they been tame servants, but now they rose with shouts of rebellion. Soon there was great fighting in the hall, and though the thralls had but meat knives and such things as they could snatch up against daggers and swords, many were quickly slain on either hand, before Túrin leapt down among them and slew the last of the Easterlings that remained in the hall. Then he rested, leaning against a pillar, and the fire of his rage was as ashes. But old Sador crept up to him and clutched him about the knees, for he was wounded to the death. "Thrice 7 years and more. It was long to wait for this hour," he said. But now go, Lord. Go and do not come back, unless with greatest strength. They will raise the land against you. Many have run from the hall. Go, or you will end here. Farewell." Then he slipped down and died. "He speaks with the truth of death," said Erin. "You have learned what you would. Now go swiftly, but go first to Morwen and comfort her, or I will hold all the wrack that you have wrought here hard to forgive. For ill though my life was, you have brought death to me with your violence. The incomers will avenge this night on all that were here. Rash are your deeds, son of Húrin, as if you were still but the child that I knew. And faint heart is yours, Erin Indor's daughter, as it was when I called you aunt, and a rough dog frightened you," said Túrin. "You were made for a kinder world, but come away, I will bring you to Morwen." "The snow lies on the land, but deeper upon my head," she answered. "I should die as soon in the wild with you as with the brute Easterlings. You cannot mend what you have done. Now go. To stay will make all the worse, and rob Morwen to no purpose. Go, I beg you." Then Túrin bowed low to her and turned and left the hall of Brodda, but all the rebels that had the strength followed him. They fled towards the mountains, for some among them knew well the ways of the wild, and they blessed the snow that fell behind them and covered their trail. Thus through soon the hunt was up. With many men and dogs and braying of horses, they escaped south into the hills. Then looking back, they saw a red light far off in the land that they had left. They have fired the hall, said Túrin. To what purpose is that? They? No, lord, she, I guess, said one, Asgon by the name. Many a man of arms misreads patience and quiet. She did much good among us at much cost. Her heart was not faint, and patience will break at the last. Now some of the hardiest that could endure the winter stayed with Túrin and led him by strange paths to a refuge in the mountains, a cave known to outlaws and renegades, and some store of food was hidden there. There they waited until the snow ceased, and they gave him food and took him to a pass little used that led south to Sirian's Vale. But the snow had not come. On the downward path they parted. Farewell now, Lord of Dor-lómin, said Asgon, but do not forget us. We shall be hunted men now, and the wolf folk will be cooler because of your coming. Therefore go and do not return, unless you come with strength to deliver us. Farewell. And so that is pretty much the end of Chapter 12, Return of Túrin to Dor-lómin. Yeah, it's very exciting, I guess. It's a very exciting and climatic way to really kind of put an end to his return, his bitter return, I should say. It was very bitter. Full of violence, but because of his cursed sword, the black sword, I think it's Anglical, if I remember correctly, but he names it Gurthang. And the whole spell of Glaurung from the last chapter is that he pretty much gets filled with this longing to go back to Dor-lómin, because that's where obviously his mother and daughter were at when he last left them, which was also a while ago. And after all of these harsh truths, that spell of Glaurung finally lifts, and and then because he has the cursed blade, he ends up killing Brodda and a lot of his men, starting a rebellion, sparking a rebellion and stuff. And a lot of the folks, I guess, there realize that. Some of them do end up escaping, some of them die in the fight. Very exciting stuff, but also he leaves the land not in a good way. Kind of. It's kind of conflicting. I mean, a lot of Túrin stuff is conflicting anyway. But him leaving and sure, he stood up against the Easterlings and whatnot, but also they're going to come back with a vengeance against the people and not so much him. So that's kind of like the bottom line, the end of the chapter and whatnot, of chapter 12. But I'm going to be reading chapter 12 and 13 because they're pretty much, they're kind of short chapters here. So chapter 13 is the coming of Túrin into Brethil. And we got another, let's see if I can kind of get it here. Yeah, that's decent, like that. Another illustration by Alan Lee here. Very cool stuff. I always love admiring all the stuff that he's done, especially just for the whole of Middle-earth and Arda, things like that. So chapter 13 is the coming of Túrin into Brethil, as I've said probably already. So I think we should just go right into the story to lead us off. So here we go. Now Túrin went down towards Sirian, and he was torn in mind. For it seemed to him that whereas before he had 2 bitter choices, now there were 3, and his oppressed people called him, upon whom he had brought only increase of woe. This comfort only he had, that beyond doubt Morwen and Nienor had come long since to Doriath, and only by the prowess of the black sword of Nargathrond had the road been made safe. And he said in his thought, where else better might I have bestowed them, and had I come indeed sooner? If the girdle of Melian be broken, then all is ended. Nay, it is better as things be, for by my wrath and rash deeds I cast a shadow wherever I dwell. Let Melian keep them, and I will leave them in peace unshadowed for a while. But too late now Túrin sought for Finduilas, roaming the woods under the eaves of arid Wethrin, wild and wary as a beast, and he waylaid all the roads that went north to the pass of Sirian. Too late, for all trails had been washed away by the rains and the snows. But thus it was that Túrin passed down Teaglin, came upon some of the people of Haleth from the forest of Brethil. There they dwindled now by war to a small people, and dwelt for the most part secretly within a stockade upon Aman Obel, deep in the forest. Ethel Brandir that place was named, for Brandir son of Handir was now their lord, since their father was slain. And Brandir was no man of war, being lamed by a leg broken in a misadventure in childhood. And he was moreover gentle in mood, loving wood rather than metal, and the knowledge of things that grow on the earth rather than other lore. But some of the woodmen still hunted the orcs on their borders, and thus it was that as Túrin came thither, he heard the sound of an affray. He hastened towards it, and coming warily through the trees, he saw a small band of men surrounded by orcs. They defended themselves desperately, with their backs to a knot of trees that grew apart in a glade. But the orcs were in great number, and they had little hope of escape, unless help came. Therefore, out of sight in the underwood, Túrin made a great noise of stamping and crashing, and then he cried in a loud voice, as if leading many men, "Ha! Here we find them! Follow me all! Out now, and slay!" At that, many of the orcs looked back in dismay, and then came out Túrin leaping, waving as if to men behind, and the edges of Girthing flickered like flame in his hand. Too well was that blade known to the orcs, and even before he sprang among them, many scattered and fled. Then the woodsmen ran to join him, and together they hunted their foes into the river. Few came across. At last they halted on the bank, and Dorlas, leader of the woodsmen, said, "You are swift in the hunt, lord, but your men are slow to follow." "Nay," said Túrin, "we all run together as one man, and will not be parted." Then the men of Brethil laughed, and said, "Well, one such is worth many, and we owe you great thanks. But who are you, and what do you do here?" "I do but follow my trade, which is orc slaying," said Túrin, "and I dwell where my trade is. I am wildman of the woods." "Then come and dwell with us," said they, "for we dwell in the woods, and we have need of such craftsmen. You would be welcome." Then Túrin looked at them strangely and said, "Are there then any left who will suffer me to darken their doors? But, friends, I have still a grievous errand, to find Finduilas, daughter of Orodreth of Nargathrond, or at least to learn news of her. Alas, many weeks it is since she was taken from Nargathrond, but still I must go seeking." Then they looked upon him with pity, and Dorlas said, "Seek no more, for an orc host came up from Nargathrond towards the crossings of Teaglin, and we had long warning of it, and marched very slow because of the number of captives that were led. Then we thought to deal our small stroke in the war, and we ambushed the orcs with all the bowmen we could muster, and hoped to save some of the prisoners. But alas, as soon as they were assailed, the foul orcs slew the first woman among their captives, and the daughter of Orodreth they fastened to a tree with a spear." Túrin stood as one mortally stricken. "How do you know this?" he said. "Because she spoke to me before she died," said Dorlas. "She looked upon us as though seeking one whom she had expected, and said, 'Mormegil, tell the Mormegil that Finduilas is here.' She said no more, but because of her latest words, we laid her where she died. She lies in a mound before Teaglin. Yes, it is a month now ago." "Bring me there," said Túrin, and they led him to a hillock by the crossings of Teaglin. There he laid himself down, and a darkness fell on him, so that they thought he was dead. But Dorlas looked down on him as he lay, and then he turned to his men and said, "Too late. This is a piteous chance. But see, here lies the Mormegil himself, the great captain of Nargathrond. By his sword we should have known him, as did the orcs. For the fame of the Black Sword of the South had gone far and wide, even in the deeps of the wood." Now therefore they lifted him with reverence, and bore him to Brandir. And Brandir, coming to meet them, wondered at the bier that they bore. Then drawing back the coverlet, he looked at the face of Túrin, son of Húrin, and a dark shadow fell on his heart. "O cruel men of Haleth," he cried, "why did you hold back death from this man? With great labor you have brought hither the last bane of our people." But the woodman said, "Nay, it is the Mormegil of Nargathrond, a mighty orc slayer, and he shall be a great help to us if he lives. And were it not so, should we leave a man woe-stricken to lie as a carrion by the way?" "You should not indeed," said Brandir. "Doom willed it not so." And he took Túrin into his house and tended him with care. But when at least Túrin shook off the darkness, spring was returning, and he awoke and saw sun on the green buds. Then the courage of the house of Hador awoke in him also, and he arose and said in his heart, "All my deeds in past days were dark and full of evil, but a new day is come. Here I will stay at peace and renounce name and kin, and so I will put my shadow behind me, or at the least not lay it upon those that I love." Therefore he took a new name, calling himself Turambar, which in the High Elven speech signified Master of Doom. And he dwelt among the woodmen and was loved by them, and he charged them to forget his name of old, and to count him as one born in Brethil. Yet with the change of name he could not change wholly his temper, nor forget his old griefs against the servants of Morgoth, and he would go hunting the orcs with a few of the same mind, though this was displeasing to Brandir, for he hoped rather to preserve his people by silence and secrecy. The Mormegil is no more, said he, yet have a care lest the valor of Turambar bring a like vengeance on Brethil. Therefore Turambar laid his black sword by, and took it no more to battle, and wielded rather the bow and the spear. But he would not suffer the orcs to use the crossings of Tieglin, or draw near the mound where Finduilas was laid. Howden Eleth it was named, the mound of the elf-maid, and soon the orcs learned to dread that place, and shunned it. And Dorla said to Turambar, You have renounced the name, but the black sword you are still, and does not rumor say truly that he was the house of Húrin, of Dor-lómin, lord of the house of Sador? And Turambar answered, So I have heard, but publish it not, I beg you, as you are my friend. And yeah, end of chapter 13 right there. I didn't really do like a break or anything, but it was very, very short. So yeah, there's another name change. Túrin just, I guess, likes changing his name for some reason, I guess. He's going all these different, personalities, I guess. So yeah, this is where he gets renamed, I guess, as Turambar. Turambar. However you pronounce it. I think it's Turambar, maybe, perhaps. I'm not the best at the Elvish pronunciations of Middle-earth, so apologize for that. But Turambar is basically his new name again, Master of Doom, which I think fits him the best. That's why, like on this, Turambar, I'm like, okay, this is the chapter that is Turambar. His name changes to that because Master of Doom fits him very well, especially after he gets the sword. And that even when he doesn't have Mormegil, he's still very hot with rage and very angered, and rightfully so, because first of all, he goes to Dor-lómin to find his mother and sister. They're both not there, and everything's overrun, and he starts this fight and sees that the hall is basically on fire and destroyed. So goes to his hometown, basically nothing happens, and things go south, and then he meets the wild men here, who bring him more bad news that Finduilas was actually slain on the hill, and so he pretty much ends up protecting the hill. So it's like, well, if he couldn't protect her from the orcs, at least, then he can at least protect her, at least her body, I guess, like her resting place. So that just ends up being that hill, which is actually really cool. I kind of like that whole process of protecting the I guess, like a sacred place, the hill, and like the orcs begin to fear it, so they don't really come there anymore. So I guess, yeah, succeeded in that part, but even then he was very much led with anger right now. So yeah, I think that's kind of like the end of the chapters here. I'm excited because it's just back into the story here, and I know for sure that we're going to be finishing Children of Húrin this year. So because we're almost, we're very long away through the story, but I'm still very excited to finish it. So yeah, at this point, if you guys are still listening, be sure to check out my channel as well. I know I already made a end of the year video thing. It was a while ago, and just saying that there are a few playlists for exploring Arda. There's all the books that I've read, from all of the Tolkien short stories to Silmarillion, and I think it was Fall of Numenor, all that stuff, and then obviously Children of Húrin. So that's the other one that I have here. So I have it created. I have the playlist created for you guys if you guys want to go back and listen to those stories. I would appreciate it. And yeah, if you want me to cover anything else Tolkien related, let me know in the comments. And also, if you want to be part of the show, talk about Tolkien, whether it's from the books or the movies or games or anything like that, anything Tolkien related, that would be really fun as well. You can just comment below, be like, hey, let's set something up or something like that, and however you want to word it. It'd be fun for next year. So, yeah. I think with all of that being said, just stay tuned for another episode. And may the light of Belgareth be with you all. Farewell.